She left the lights on when she closed the door behind her. Not out of carelessness, she wanted me to see. The hallway, the heels, the shimmer of her dress, the scent that hung in the air after she disappeared. Every part of it choreographed. Like I was meant to remember every frame of her exit. And I did. I still do. She didn't slam the door. She clicked it shut, gently. With intention. Like the final page of a book she'd been forcing herself to finish. I sat at the kitchen table for maybe 10 minutes after. Maybe 30. Time stopped behaving the way it should. I just kept staring at the plate I'd made for her. Lamb, roasted red potatoes, the wine we'd opened together 5 years ago and never touched. Our anniversary dinner, uneaten. That's when I noticed the envelope. It wasn't hidden. It was right there beside the flowers I bought. Inside was a note. Handwritten. I'll never forget what it said. Please don't follow me. I need this. Just tonight. I hope one day you'll understand. I didn't cry. Not at first. My hands were too busy shaking. The ironic part? I'd spent the entire week worrying whether the wine had aged well. Turns out, it didn't matter. She had other plans. And the worst part? I said yes. Earlier that day, she stood in our bedroom doorway with one hand on her hip like she was deciding between two outfits. That's when she told me. Straight-faced. Like she was asking to go to the spa or dinner with a friend. Just one night, she said. With Trevor. It's not a betrayal. It's closure. Closure. That's the word she chose while standing in front of me, on the same floor where we once slow danced to music from a Bluetooth speaker. The same place where I proposed to her barefoot in pajama pants because I couldn't wait for the weekend. I didn't even ask who Trevor was. I already knew. He worked in her department. He wore a necklace, posted gym selfies, and once called our cat, just a thing with claws. She laughed at that like it was charming. Now, she was giving herself to him, not with passion, but with permission. Mine. You want to know what kind of man lets his wife spend their anniversary night with someone else? The kind that still thinks she might come back. The kind that believes if he acts understanding enough, maybe she'll remember the soft man who let her go without screaming. The kind of man who spends the next 4 hours sitting in silence, staring at the door, trying not to text her. But I did. I texted just one thing. I left the porch light on. Come back if you want. She never replied. And that's when I opened my laptop and started typing all this. I didn't move from the table. Not even when the potatoes went cold and the wine started to sweat. It felt like my entire life had stopped breathing in that moment. Everything had gone silent, not the kind of silence that soothes, but the kind that screams. The kind that makes the ticking of a wall clock sound like thunder. I couldn't shake the image of her walking out, that swaying dress, the way she didn't look back, the absence of hesitation. She had planned this. Maybe not for days. Maybe for weeks. Maybe longer. That was the part that got under my skin the most. The realization that while I was fretting over which dessert she liked better, or if I should play our wedding song at dinner, she was rehearsing how to ask me for permission to betray me. And I gave it. I let her go with a nod and a choked, if that's what you need. I told myself I was being noble. Mature. That if I gave her space, she'd come back and see me differently. Appreciate me. Regret everything. That was the lie I fed myself just to stay upright. Around midnight, I found myself back in our bedroom, or what used to feel like our bedroom. I sat on the floor, my back against the bed frame, holding her note in my hand like it was a contract I had stupidly signed. My eyes kept drifting to her side of the bed. The pillow still held the shape of her head. Her scent was still there. And yet, she wasn't. Somewhere across the city, she was with him. Trevor. I could see it all in my head, and trust me, I tried not to. But imagination is cruel like that. Every time I blinked, I saw her laughing in dim lighting, her hand on his chest, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. So I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't do. I opened her laptop. I know. That's low. That's a betrayal too. But I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for answers. It didn't take long. The browser history wasn't wiped. The messages were there, plain as day, threads of conversation between her and Trevor, some stretching back months. At first, they were harmless. Funny meeting notes, client said this dumb thing today, that sort of thing. But then I saw the shift. The compliments. The inside jokes. The kind of banter that slowly replaces emotional intimacy in a marriage. And then, the photos. Nothing explicit, but suggestive enough to say everything I didn't want confirmed. There was one message from a week ago that shattered me. You deserve one night that's all yours. I hope he understands. He. Me. I have become a shadow in my own relationship. A footnote. A barrier to her freedom. I don't know how long I stared at that screen. Long enough that the sun started to push through the blinds. And that's when I heard the sound of the front door. She was back. And I wasn't ready. She walked in like nothing had happened. Hair a bit disheveled, heels in her hand, her voice soft. "Hey," she said. That was it. Just, hey. Like she had come back from the gym. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She stopped when she saw me sitting there. Her eyes darted to the laptop. I didn't need to say anything. Her face told me she knew what I'd seen. I waited for her to explain. To say it meant nothing. To tell me she regretted it. But she didn't. She just looked at me like someone might look at a pet they forgot to feed. "I didn't want you to find out like that," she said finally, as if that was the real tragedy. And in that moment, I understood something terrible. She hadn't done this because she was unsure. She had done it because she was sure. She had already left me long before she asked for, just one night. And now that she was back, I realized I wasn't. She didn't sit down. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to come in or just turn around and leave again. Her face was flushed, not from guilt or shame, but from the cold. Or maybe adrenaline. Or maybe from laughing too hard in someone else's arms. I'll never know. But she looked finished. Not with the night. With me. The silence between us stretched, pressing against my chest like wet cement. My mouth was dry, my thoughts racing in 5 directions at once, and somehow, despite the chaos in my head, the only thing I could say was, "Did you sleep with him?" She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like the question was beneath her. "That's not the point," she replied softly. "You already decided what you think." I shook my head. "You wanted me to know. That's why you left the lights on. That's why you left the note. This wasn't about closure. This was about permission. About not having to carry the blame." She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but no words came. That was the first time I saw her hesitate since this entire thing started. And for a second, a very small, pathetic second, I thought maybe that hesitation meant she was sorry. But then she looked away, shrugged. Like that hesitation didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. "I just needed to know for sure," she said, like she was talking to herself more than to me. And then I broke. Not in a dramatic way. No yelling. No throwing chairs or smashing dishes like in those overdone breakup scenes you see in movies. I just stood up slowly, took the wine bottle off the table, the one I'd been saving for 7 years, and poured it straight down the drain. The red swirled like blood down porcelain, and I swear, that sound, that quiet glugging, it was louder than her confession. She asked what I was doing. I said, "Making room." "For what?" she asked, arms crossed like this was just another argument about chores. "For whatever comes next." She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm not leaving you, Russell. Don't make this dramatic." And that's when I laughed. Actually laughed. It came out cracked and bitter and sad. "You already left. You just didn't bother packing." She didn't respond. She just walked into the bedroom, as if the entire situation had reached its natural end. I heard the sound of a zipper her dress. Then the closet door creaked open. Drawers slid shut. She was already moving on, already back into her routine, like this was a mild inconvenience she'd returned to after a full night of emotional indulgence. And I was still standing in the kitchen like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the headlights of passing cars spill across the wall. The entire apartment felt colder, quieter, like it knew, somehow, that everything had changed and it didn't want to get involved. Around 4 a.m., I finally stood up and did something I never thought I would. I packed a bag. Just a small one, a weekend duffel. No big speech, no shouting. Just the essentials. A few shirts, a toothbrush, my laptop. Before I left, I wrote her a note on the back of her own envelope. "You said one night. Now it's mine." I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. As I closed the door behind me, this time gently, but not for her, I wondered if she'd even bother reading the note, or if she'd just toss it aside like everything else that came from me. But I wasn't walking away out of pride. I was walking away because, for the first time in 7 years, I realized how alone I had been long before she ever stepped out that door. It was almost sunrise when I found myself parked outside an all-night diner on the edge of town. The kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and grease, where the waitresses didn't ask questions if you looked like you hadn't slept. I hadn't planned to end up there, but my hands had been shaking too much to keep driving, and part of me needed to be around something, anything, that felt real. The booth was sticky, the lights too bright, but it was better than the silence of our apartment. The waitress poured me a coffee without asking, called me sweetheart, and slid a menu across the table like she was trying to remind me I still had choices. I didn't order anything. I just sat there and let the caffeine burn my throat while my mind kept replaying the past 6 months of my marriage. Things that once felt small, missed texts, subtle eye rolls. I'm just tired. They weren't small anymore. They were breadcrumbs. A slow unraveling I hadn't wanted to see. I thought I was being patient, understanding, loyal, but maybe I was just being ignored. I checked my phone. No messages. I hated that I was disappointed. It was that kind of quiet, pathetic self-awareness that made me want to throw the phone across the diner. Instead, I just turned it off. Because deep down, I knew if I kept waiting for her to say something, to do something, I'd still be chained to her choices. She had taken her night. I was going to take mine. At 7:12 a.m., I got a text, but not from her. It was from Jonah, my oldest friend. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Life got in the way, then it got awkward, and then we just let the distance grow. The message was short. Heard from Katie. She said Dana left you? Call me, please. Katie was Jonah's wife. Apparently, Dana had already started talking. I didn't even know how to process that. She hadn't sent me a message, hadn't called to ask if I was okay, but she had already told friends? I guess that's how it works when someone prepares for a break they never actually intend to mend. They don't just leave. They spread the narrative. Still, I didn't call Jonah. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove. Aimlessly. Through streets we used to walk together. Past the bookstore where she once cried because they didn't have a copy of some obscure poetry book. Past the dog park we used to talk about visiting once we had time. We never went. I ended up in front of the hotel. Yeah, that hotel. It wasn't intentional. My hands just took me there, like they were tired of waiting for my heart to catch up to the truth. It was a weirdly modern building. Too much glass, sleek signage, all trying so hard to look expensive. But no matter how they dressed it up, I could still see the betrayal underneath. I parked across the street and watched. And as if scripted by some cruel force, I saw her. Dana stepped out of the building, her hair up in that loose twist she used to wear when we'd go on date nights. She was laughing, not looking around, not checking her phone. She wasn't walking like someone who had just destroyed something. She was walking like someone who had just been freed. Then he came out after her. Trevor. He looked younger than me. Not in age, necessarily, but in the way he carried himself. Cocky, overly confident, like nothing in the world could reach him. He touched the small of her back. She didn't flinch. I watched them walk away. Together. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something in me shifted. Quietly. Finally. It was the moment I accepted she wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She hadn't slipped and made a mistake. She had chosen. And so would I. That night, I checked into a small motel. No frills. Just 4 walls, a bed, and a lamp that buzzed faintly when turned on. I sat down with my laptop and opened a new document. Not for a letter to Dana. Not for therapy. But for the truth. The truth about how I became invisible in my own life. How I let 1,000 small compromises become one giant permission slip to be discarded. And I started typing. Word by word. Memory by memory. Because if she was going to rewrite our story, I wasn't going to let her be the only narrator. It's strange what your mind clings to in the middle of something falling apart. I remember staring at the motel's peeling wallpaper and fixating on a weird stain on the ceiling that looked like a moth in flight. Everything else, the betrayal, the humiliation, the haunting silence of a marriage that had already died, faded into the background while I tried to make sense of a shape made by water damage. That's what grief does. It distracts you just long enough to keep you from collapsing. I wrote for hours that night. I didn't plan to. But once I started, it was like I couldn't stop. The words poured out, not just about Dana and Trevor, but about me. The things I had ignored. The excuses I had made. How I had mistaken her coldness for exhaustion, her distance for stress. I'd been so desperate to avoid confrontation that I allowed myself to be quietly erased. Piece by piece. At some point near morning, I fell asleep at the desk with the screen still glowing. When I woke up, there was a message from Jonah. She told everyone you gave her permission. That you were supportive. What the hell is going on, man? I stared at it for a long time. She was rewriting the narrative already, casting me as the spineless husband who encouraged her journey. Not the man who sat across from her while she carved open the heart of our marriage and called it healing. I called Jonah back. He picked up after one ring, voice heavy with caution. Russ, Yeah. A pause. Dude, what the hell is happening? I told him everything. Slowly. Bitterly. Not to defend myself, but because I needed at least one person to know the truth before it vanished completely beneath Dana's version of it. Jonah didn't interrupt much. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he said, "You're not the only one, man." I blinked. What? She did the same thing to one of Katie's friends 2 years ago. Same wording. Same script. One night. Closure. It wrecked the guy. Dana's not the only one Trevor's been helping move on. He's got a reputation. You didn't deserve this. That confirmation hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just personal betrayal, it was rehearsed. A performance she'd probably been perfecting for months. Maybe longer. I thanked him and hung up, then just sat there, staring at nothing. I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Dana's face when she came home after that night. She didn't look guilty. She looked finished, like she'd been waiting for the moment I stopped matching, and now it had finally arrived. I went back to the apartment that afternoon, not to talk to her, but to get the rest of my things. I didn't knock. I still had my key. She was there, sitting on the couch, watching some reality show, barefoot, like everything was normal. She looked up, surprised but not shocked. "You're back," she asked. "I'm packing," I said simply. She tilted her head. "You're really doing this?" "I should have done it months ago." Dana stood slowly and followed me to the bedroom, arms crossed. "You're just leaving? After everything?" I laughed under my breath. "After everything? Dana, you left before I ever touched that door." "I was honest," she snapped. "I told you what I needed. That's more than most people do." "No. You told me what you were going to do, and you made me feel like I was crazy if I didn't smile and applaud it. You didn't want honesty. You wanted permission, so you wouldn't have to feel like the villain." She didn't answer. She just stared, eyes cold and dry. I finished packing and closed the suitcase. And then I did something that surprised even me. I walked over to our bookshelf, the one where we kept all our travel journals, little mementos, stupid Polaroids from years ago. I pulled them down, one by one, and set them on the bed. She looked confused. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving them. You can rewrite whatever story you want. Tell whoever you want that I supported you. But I'm keeping the truth. Every word of it." Then I handed her a flash drive, the document I'd written at the motel. She didn't take it, just stared at it like it might bite her. "I'm not going to destroy you, Dana. But I'm not going to disappear either. If you want closure, here's mine." She didn't say a word as I walked out. The strange thing was, I didn't feel broken. I felt like I had finally stopped waiting for her to love me again. The drive away from the apartment wasn't triumphant. It wasn't cinematic. There was no epic music in the background, no tears streaking down my face, no dramatic rearview glance. It was quiet. Heavy. Like driving through fog with the windows up, everything muffled, dulled. I didn't know where I was going yet, but for once, the not knowing didn't terrify me. It just felt open. The strange part? I didn't miss her. Not immediately. What I missed was the version of her I used to believe in. The Dana who laughed so hard at my bad impressions that she once snorted wine through her nose. The one who insisted we rescue an elderly cat with one eye and a crooked tail because he looked like he'd seen things. That Dana was long gone. Maybe she never existed. Maybe I'd been in love with a character she played just well enough for me to believe in. I ended up at a cabin Jonah offered me, a family place that hadn't been used since his uncle passed. The plumbing groaned, the fireplace barely worked, and I had to shake out mouse droppings from the dresser drawers. But it was quiet. Remote. Untouched by her. I could breathe. I spent the next 2 days doing something I hadn't done in years. Absolutely nothing. I didn't check social media. I didn't answer messages. I didn't even open the laptop. I chopped firewood. I burned dinner. I took long walks without direction, let the cold bite at my fingers until I couldn't feel them. It was brutal and raw and exactly what I needed. On the third day, my phone finally rang. It was Katie, Jonah's wife. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hey," she said, and her voice was thick. "Careful." I wasn't sure if I should call. I told her it was okay. I wanted you to know, Dana's saying you overreacted. That she was honest with you. And you freaked out and disappeared. Of course she was. I sighed. I figured as much. Katie was quiet for a second. Then she said something that caught me off guard. I told her she was disgusting. My breath caught. She tried to act like she was enlightened. Katie continued, her voice sharper now. Like her little emotional awakening gave her a right to blow up your marriage. She called it self-care. I called it manipulation. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. I just wanted you to know, she said finally. Not everyone believes her. Some of us still see you. That sentence landed harder than it probably should have. Some of us still see you. When you've been invisible for so long, when someone you love trains themselves not to look at you, being seen feels like oxygen. After we hung up, I walked out into the cold night and sat on the porch. The trees were still. No wind, no rustling, just silence and stars. That's when I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit. I wasn't mourning Dana. I was mourning the man I used to be with her. The one who apologized too often. The one who planned romantic dinners alone. The one who watched her fall out of love in real time and convinced himself it was a phase. I wasn't going back to him either. That night, I opened the laptop again. Not to add to the document, but to delete it. Every word. I'd written it for her. For some imagined moment where she'd read it and collapse with regret. But I didn't need that fantasy anymore. Her regret wasn't my closure. My leaving was. A few days later, I went back to the city. Not to her. To the lawyer. I didn't want drama. No screaming. Just paperwork. I asked for nothing but my name back. No furniture. No claims. I didn't want her cat. I didn't want the apartment. I didn't want to fight. All I wanted was out. The lawyer, an older man with the look of someone who'd seen 1,000 couples crash and burn, nodded slowly when I explained. He said, "You're doing the right thing. Most people wait until they're ashes." When Dana got the papers, she didn't respond directly. She sent a single message. "So this is it." I didn't reply. There was no it. There hadn't been an it for a long time. But that message, short, bitter, self-pitying, told me everything. She thought she could fracture our life and still keep the parts that made her comfortable. She never expected me to disappear, to choose myself. She wanted me to break. Instead, I let go. I didn't expect peace to feel so empty. The apartment was behind me, the paperwork was filed, and Dana was now, officially, a page I no longer had to read. And yet, that first week of freedom felt like stepping into a quiet room and realizing your voice doesn't echo back anymore. I wasn't mourning her. That part was long gone. But I was adjusting to the weightlessness of not having to carry someone else's silence anymore. There's a strange mourning that happens when you stop chasing approval. For so long, I measured my worth through Dana's moods. Her validation. Her occasional, flickering kindness. Without it, I had to learn what it meant to look in the mirror and recognize myself without her reflection hovering behind me. And I didn't always like what I saw. Truth is, I had become a version of myself that I didn't respect. Quietly apologetic. Always adjusting. Always second-guessing. I wasn't weak because I stayed. I was weak because I forgot I had a choice to leave. But now I was building again. From the ground up. Jonah helped me find a small studio apartment across town. Nothing special, just a single room with a view of a laundromat and a taco truck. But it was mine. I bought mismatched plates, a lumpy couch, and a secondhand record player that skipped during the chorus of every song. I liked that. It reminded me that imperfection could still be beautiful, still work. One afternoon, while unpacking a box of old books, I found a card, an anniversary card I had written for Dana years ago and never gave her. I don't even remember why I kept it. Maybe I sensed she wouldn't appreciate it. Maybe I hoped I'd find a better moment. But now, years later, opening that envelope and reading what I wrote, I realized just how long I'd been begging for crumbs. It said, "No matter how far apart we feel, I'll keep showing up. I'll keep waiting for you to come back to us." That was the man I used to be, faithful to a version of love that didn't love him back. I burned the card in the kitchen sink, watched the words curl into ash and vanish down the drain, just like she had. A week later, I got a voicemail. Not a call. A voicemail. From Dana. Her voice was softer than I remembered, and it irritated me how calculated it sounded. As if she'd rehearsed it. "Hey, Russell. I don't know what to say. I guess I wasn't expecting you to just vanish. You were always the one who stayed. I guess I thought you'd wait until I figured things out. I'm not asking for anything, I just wanted you to know I think about you. And I hope you're okay." I listened to it twice. Not because I missed her, but because I was trying to figure out what she really wanted. Guilt? Closure? A crack to crawl back through if things with Trevor didn't work out? I didn't respond. I deleted the message and blocked her number. Not out of spite. Out of mercy. For me. Because I'd finally reached a place she never could stillness. And just when I thought this chapter was closing quietly, it didn't. That Sunday, I stopped by Jonah and Katie's house for a quiet dinner. Halfway through the meal, Katie excused herself and returned holding a phone. "Russ," she said slowly, "I wasn't going to tell you this, but you deserve to see it." She showed me a photo. A screenshot from a private Instagram story Dana had posted to her close friends list, not realizing Katie was still on it. It was a photo of Dana and Trevor at a beach resort. Matching ropes. Champagne flutes. Captioned, "Finally free. Sometimes you have to lose one thing to gain something better." I should have felt something. Anger, betrayal, grief. But what I felt instead was this eerie clarity, like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about the lie I'd lived in, the slow rut I called patience, the illusion I called love. It was never about one night. It was about a woman who had long decided she wanted out, and a man who was too afraid to believe it. Until now. As we sat around the table, Jonah asked quietly, "Are you okay?" And for the first time in years, I meant it when I said, "I think I will be." I didn't return to the apartment. I didn't drive past it. I didn't scroll through her social media or look up what she was doing or who she was with. I let her go, truly let her go, not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood that caring doesn't mean sacrificing yourself just to be tolerated. 3 months passed. 3 months of silence. 3 months of healing in small, private ways no one could see, the kind of healing that doesn't come with dramatic declarations, but with moments like realizing I could fall asleep without wondering if her back was turned toward me for a reason, or making coffee in the morning and not bracing for cold shoulder glances across the kitchen. I started going to this little bookstore near my place, the kind that also sells overpriced herbal tea and plays indie folk music no one recognizes. I'd sit by the window, sip my tea, and write. Not to make sense of the past anymore, but to find myself again. Word by word. That's where I met her. Her name was Elise. She dropped her tote bag beside my table by accident, scattering 3 books and a pair of glasses she didn't even need to wear. She later admitted they were blue light lenses and made her feel academic. She apologized twice, then paused. "You write?" she asked, eyeing my laptop. "Trying to," I said. "Mostly just processing." She smiled. "That's writing. It counts." I didn't fall in love that day. This isn't one of those stories. There were no instant sparks or love at first sight cliches. But I laughed, genuinely, awkwardly, the way I hadn't in years, and for the first time since Dana walked out that door, I saw a future where someone might choose me again. Not out of habit. Not out of guilt. Not out of obligation. But because they wanted to. Elise and I started talking more. Sometimes about books, sometimes about nothing. It was never forced. There was no weight of old expectations or pressure to be anything other than exactly who we were. It was refreshing, like breathing clean air after living underwater for too long. One day, we took a walk through a quiet part of town, and she asked me, "What's the one thing you learned after it all?" I thought about it for a moment and said that loving someone shouldn't feel like disappearing. She nodded. "Then you've already won." And maybe I had. Not in the way I once thought. Not by salvaging a broken marriage or convincing someone to stay, but by finding the strength to walk away, to rebuild without bitterness, and to believe that there's still beauty on the other side of collapse. The truth is, she asked for one night away, and I gave it to her. What she didn't know was that she gave me something too. She gave me the final reason to stop waiting. And in the end, I didn't lose myself. I finally